Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Future Tech podcast series. It's me, Charlie Sell, the Group MD of Arrows Group, where I get a chance to interview, speak with thought leaders, investors, technology leaders, all around what's happening in the market, their personal story, and that all-important career advice. At the end, as always, it's sponsored by the STEM Ambassadors charity. And I'm really, really pleased to have Tony Zappalà today with me. Tony is one of the co-founders of Highland Europe. Highland Europe is a venture capitalist specializing within the technology sector. So as you can well imagine, Tony and his whole team and colleagues, they spend a lot of their time looking at the best companies out there for many, many different reasons. So it'll be really interesting to get his insights into what they look at. So Tony, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Charlie. Pleasure to be here.
So let's jump straight in and tell us a bit about your story. How did you get into the world of technology and investment?
So I guess world of technology was always something which I enjoyed. So as a kid, would be spending a lot of time mucking around on my computer, or at school was pretty much only interested in sciences and tech and maths and stuff. So fairly natural progression, went into engineering, so did information and electronic engineering as my undergrad, and had lots of fun, enjoyed that. I guess it was after university and after sort of doing a few internships that I got more interested on the business side of things. So ended up going to work for a consulting firm in London after university, which I saw as really an opportunity to learn a little bit about how those decisions are made about what you're working on. And then after that, decided I missed tech. So went back towards to work in a technology company. At the time, it was a semiconductor company, doing mergers and acquisitions, which was helping them look at startups and other companies that they could be working together with or buying. So it was sort of a combination of business and technology. I think at the time I'd barely heard about venture capital and investing as such, but because of that role, I got to meet a few venture capital firms who were generally looking to have partnerships between the companies they'd invested in and the big corporate I was working for, and got quite interested in the world of startups. So thought that sounded fun, and basically had the opportunity to go for a new job in a different country within the firm I was at. Thought it was a good time to look around as well and maybe see if there were any startups that I could join instead. And spoke to some VCs as part of that because I felt they were pretty close to the startups. And it so happened one of them actually suggested they were looking for somebody with my kind of profile for working within the VC firm, and that's how it started really.
Wow. Okay. So so that's brilliant. So from having that engineering and technology background, that sort of led you in good stead with a passion for the industry, but then to move into the actual business side of it, looking at many different businesses and actually looking at what makes a great business, I guess. Yeah.
So it's the combination of all those things. So it felt a fairly natural fit once I joined because absolutely you have to. You get an amazing opportunity to speak to lots of founders who've set up the business, really passionate about what they do, and they spend time educating you about why they're spending their life doing this particular new product, new project, new technology. And then in the background, you have to sort of, on the one hand, try and understand if the technology actually makes sense, and then with your sort of business hat on, understand if can you actually make money doing this. And then take it all together. Is this a company that you'd want to be working with? And I'm probably have a hard time just focusing on one thing at a time. So I actually really enjoy the fact that you speak to lots of different businesses doing different things, different kind of problems. So it's a combination which worked out for me, let's say.
Yeah, fantastic. And so I think that's going to be really interesting to a lot of our listeners is, as you said, speaking to lots of founders and having that breadth of being able to really look at the entire market, I guess. What stands out to you when you're looking at companies, and maybe it's either from a cultural point of view or even from a founder's vision point of view, what do you think really stands out with the companies that you've seen that have become really successful? Is there any common traits in the culture or the founders' visions?
Always hard to generalize, but I'll give it a go. I think the ones which I've ended up enjoying the most are companies which are probably not necessarily fashionable at the time. So where the founders are really going for something which they are passionate about, they have inside knowledge about, they've seen a problem, they've felt it firsthand, and they sort of, don't care if it's the latest buzzword or not. They just see a problem and they want to build a solution for that problem, and they have that passion which can see a solution and can get other people excited about that. And so excited, about investing in it, about going to work for it, about, often it's a question of convincing your first customers to trust this tiny company, which almost doesn't exist, to do something important for this new client. So you need that passion and excitement, and combined with a little bit of knowledge about, why is this problem worthy of spending a lot of time finding a solution on? And then that can be in lots of different sectors. And I think keeping an open mind is pretty helpful. I think it's very easy to get sucked into what's the latest trendy sector. It's all about crypto. It's all about whatever, e-commerce at the time. It can be, but that's really not the critical factor.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely brilliant point, that it's got to be a business that's built on solving a problem, isn't it? And if you can understand, and if the founders truly understand that and have a vision on how they can fix the problem, and can relay that message, I guess, to not only the clients but internally to the people who join them, that this is our vision, this is what we're trying to solve, this is what we're trying to fix. It really is industry agnostic, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sort of open mind has also led me to working in companies in fairly diverse sectors, doing pretty different things, which is great. You always learn from doing this and from seeing what works in different areas.
And so do you think that also resonates then with the technology that companies invest in? That, because again, in the world, and for many of our listeners, they'll a lot of them are now polyglot engineers, so they're studying an array of different development languages, and gone are the days really of someone being an absolute specialist in one, but needing to understand a bit more the breadth of the technology landscape. Do you think that's the way forward, or do you think actually for many companies it is the tech, and choosing the right tech is essential to their success?
Choosing the right tech is definitely still very important. I think partly related to the talent that you can attract, I think, and then partly related to the efficiency and elegance of the solutions. Just how long is it going to take you to make fixes, to develop new products, new projects? There's definitely, you definitely get a sense that the best engineers also want to work in companies which will allow them to become proficient in the latest languages and the latest technologies. And that's actually quite important to be able to do that. It sort of self-reinforces. You can build better products and you can attract better engineers to work on those products. Having said that, from our perspective, we tend to try and look one level beyond that in terms of, is the company shipping products that customers love? And if the answer is yes, then clearly they're doing something right from the technology standpoint, but it's probably not the first thing we look at, if that makes sense, as an investor.
Yeah, and and that makes total sense. And I think you made a really valid point there that people do want to work with latest tech, but the product has to come first. Is the product solving the problem? Is there a need for it? Because you can have the best product in the world, but if it's not actually there fixing a problem or in demand, then quite quickly won't be successful, will it? So, because I guess the other nice thing, and I spend a lot of my time talking to young people about the differences of joining a scale-up business, so a small startup, scale up, and then an enterprise. And one of the things I'll commonly tell people is the beauty of a startup or scale-up is it's a blank canvas. So the tech that they're investing in, the tech they're using, 9 times out of 10 will be cutting edge. It's the challenge is if you join a more established business that has legacy platforms and legacy tech, you may be finding yourself working on more of an array, but old tech versus new tech. And so the advantages of joining a startup and scale up, may not be the training per se, but it will be the exposure to great tech and people who are passionate about it. Would you say that's
no, I think that's fair. I'd probably go even further in that it's so much a blank canvas that somebody joining, if they really see a technology which they think would be amazing to add, and there's always the possibility to bring new things and new initiatives. And I think the jobs are not very strictly defined. So if somebody wants to do something, on the side, extra, add another feature, another bit of functionality, using something different, there's normally embraced with open arms if it's something which is going to make the product or the company better.
Yeah, and again, I would totally agree, and I think that's always the for me the overriding advantage of joining a scale up and startup, and then the cost of that. And I think for many of our people listening, it'd be great if to hear your thoughts on it. Is you also have to be willing to do everything when you join a business like this, and so whether that's in engineering or in any other department, it is all about teamwork, isn't it? And your willingness to go the extra mile with your team and to put that level of work in to achieve your goals, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes with that job description being very loose, that it's all hands on deck. If suddenly there's a bug, there's a problem for one of the customers, or the website is down, everybody is all hands to try and fix it at any time, which is the downside. Or the upside is then it can be quite an exciting environment. What is probably a bit of a downside, and this is where it's horses for courses, depending on what people want, but the smaller companies generally won't have any kind of formal induction, training, all of that kind of stuff, where the big companies typically excel, where they'll have all the programs, the training, the mentors, the management, feedback loops, making it very clear what's expected of people, which can make it an easier transition into full-time work.
Yeah. And looking at the modern day businesses now, and especially post-COVID, a question we get commonly asked is, does hybrid working work within tech businesses? And can businesses really scale and attract people who may not, who may only come to the office once or twice a week or a few times a month? Do you have a view of what you think the future of the ideal ways of working that attracts the right people, and if there's a specific trend at the moment?
So COVID's definitely made a big change for all the companies, and I think it also for allowing, on the one hand, managers to see what's possible and how teams continue working together, not being physically co-located, and also allowing employees to the flexibility of working from different locations and figuring out their lives in a slightly different way. And what I'm sure of is we're not going to go back exactly to what it was before, so everybody in the office all the time. I think what we're seeing is increasingly some kind of hybrid mix, so at least 1, 2, 3 days where people don't have to be in the office. And what I think the best companies are doing is making it useful to be in the office. And what I mean by that is just going in the office to then be stuck in front of your computer doing Zoom calls is not a good use of, having spent an hour commuting into the office. So making sure that the right teams are all present at the same time, the same days in the office, that there is actually opportunities for shared learning and for having fun with colleagues, getting that team building, team bonding going, rather than just making people come into the office to be stuck alone in front of their computer, which they could have just as easily done by home.
Yeah, and again, I think you make such a valid point there, because it's, we call it social learning. There's so much social learning that can happen if you're together, physically together, but it's absolutely redundant if there's only one or two people, or if you're commuting an hour to an empty office, or spending the entire day in a room on Zoom calls. So it's, again, I think it's one of those advantages of a scale up and startup businesses where half of the value is being together and learning from each other and being in it, but equally getting that flexibility that allows you to, really focus and achieve what you want to achieve. Thinking of many of the young people again, and I use the word young people always on purpose rather than graduates, because many of our listeners and with our charity, they may not be able to go to university. They have a love for technology, but it may not be their path. What's your views on how young people can get into STEM or technology through other paths? Do you think it's possible?
Absolutely. So it depends on what the different paths are, but I'd say within the companies we've backed, there's a pretty significant number of people, and that can be on the engineering side, it can be on the sales side, it can be on the more creative design side, where they haven't necessarily gone through formal university education. On the tech side, it's really about showing the skills and what you can do. That can be via code examples, GitHub, repositories where there's projects people have worked on. That's just as important, and typically the interview processes involve that kind of thing: code reviews, exercises, challenges. And the best companies probably actually do CV blind screening. So actually removing information such as, went to this university, went to this school, etc., just to be able to select people based on the sort of the skills and experience which are required for the job, rather than biasing towards, we'll just take people from this school or that school.
Yeah, and again, that's the blind CVs and having that genuine ability to be able to interview people unbiased, is the future. I totally agree with you. So thinking then about the career advice, again, a lot of our listeners, sometimes they're stuck thinking about, how can I get noticed? There's so much noise out there. There's so many opportunities. How can I stand out? How can I get a foot in the door of a business I want to join? Have you got any advice, any thoughts, just a couple of thoughts on how someone can stand out?
Again, it depends very much on what the role people are looking for. Going on the tech engineering kind of roles, getting noticed, sometimes could be contributing to open source projects, participating in hackathons, or even building their own projects, apps, whatever it might be, and having those being distributed, being noticed, being out there. I think all of those are very valid, as well as more formal internships. A lot of companies do offer those as well. So anything where you get people to see the quality of your work. In more general business roles, it's probably more about demonstrating the passion and understanding of that particular company. So I think, well, you're probably best placed for this than me, but I think companies receiving just blanket standard letters saying, I'd love an internship, is, they receive too many for that to be really impactful. But anything which gives insight as to why you're particularly excited about that company, about that product, and that you understand some aspect, you have some recommendations, some suggestions, that immediately leads to being considered differently, and to have a different discussion also with whoever you're speaking to.
Yeah, I think both of those points really stand out, so in summary of the notes I just took, yeah, a lot of actually getting involved in hackathons, getting involved in building your own apps, that only adds credibility, even if the product doesn't necessarily work, but it's fun, but it's fundamentally well structured or well thought. It gives the company a chance to see where you can be developed and your thought process, and as you say, to then be unique and to stand out and not to do generic emails and templates and cover letters, as you said. We live that on a daily basis, but also to be a little bit clever, do little video introductions, get your personality across. I always think is a unique way of setting ourselves apart.
Absolutely.
Well, look, Tony, thank you. Can you believe that's a podcast flown by, and your thoughts are just super appreciated. It's great to get on our show different viewpoints, and yourself from co-founding and starting Highland Europe, so from the investor background, to see that there's a lot of similarity between what you look for in a business and probably what the engineering managers look for and the young people listening. It's really inspiring to know that there's a common thread there. So look, thank you for your time. How did you find it?
It was great. Always good to chat, Charlie. And
Yeah.
Obviously, as somebody who's benefited going through the world of tech from a sort of career standpoint, I'd love to see more opportunities and more people coming into the industry.
Brilliant. Well, look, Tony, thank you so much. So to our listeners, that's another episode of our Future Tech podcast. As hopefully most of you know, it's on our landing page, arrowsgroup.com/podcasts, as well as on the STEM Ambassadors social portals and our many partner universities. So here's another episode. Thanks to everyone for listening. And one more time, thank you, Tony, for being a guest.
Thank you, Charlie. Speak soon.